I'm Christy Hemingway, host of Ed Curation, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. I am excited to be here with you on this wonderful Monday evening, or it could be well into Tuesday, depending on where you're joining us in the world. I simply want to say thank you so much for making us part of your day, making us part of your podcast queue, making us part of just your social media, and allowing us to come into your devices and into your ears with just some amazing conversations, amazing chat, so much energy, and I am excited for today's chat. But before we welcome our guest, as always, I just want to say thank you for all the likes, shares, and follows. Recently, we just got some great news that we have had 25,000 views, of our channel and all that good stuff on YouTube. So I would appreciate it if you can just give us a thumbs up, maybe subscribe to our channel as well, so we can get to 1,000 subscribers. And also, as always, just follow us on social media at My EdTech Life. But again, thank you so much for all of your support. As you know, our mission is to connect educators and creators one show at a time. And today we are definitely making a wonderful connection, as I have been following our guest for a great while, maybe about a year and a half, pretty much, to date. She has worked with one of my favorite companies, which is a great platform that we use in our district. And for me, I just simply call it the Swiss Army knife for any teacher, because you can practically do just about anything that you need to do to help, you support your students, of course, support anybody in your classroom, but in supporting the teachers, and obviously the customer support and the integration and all of that is just phenomenal. So I am excited to welcome Sophie Youngs to the show. Sophie, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty good.
Excellent, excellent. I'm really excited again. Like I said, big fan. Been following you for a while, and so it's great to see your stories, and of course all the stuff that you do with Cami, and that we'll get into in just a second. And of course, congratulations also on your new role. So that's wonderful. So I want to say congrats to that, because it's going to be something huge, something big, and it's only onward and upwards from here, Sophie. So just keep doing the amazing work that you're doing. So, Sophie, before we get started, and we get started with all the great stuff that you do through Cami, but as everybody knows, when I start the show, everybody that I invite to the show is somebody that I admire, that I have followed, and I love the work that they're doing. So I liken them to a superhero, and as you know, every superhero has an origin story. So, Sophie, I would love for you to give us a little brief introduction, and then tell us a little bit about your education journey. And I want to start off just by asking if education was something that you knew you wanted to get into, or was it something that you came into a little later in life?
As an educator, I started out as a middle school math, science, and technology teacher, and I bounced around to a lot of different schools, and counties and districts and stuff, and just learned so much along the way from all the fellow teachers. Before I transitioned into becoming a technology and curriculum specialist, I was like a coach for instruction and tech for the secondary teachers in my district. And that was the jackpot right there. That's when I found my niche. I love helping teachers. I love figuring out solutions to their problems and figuring out creative ways to use a tool that the teacher didn't necessarily think could happen, could solve their problem, could help them do things a lot smoother. And then during that time, I became a Cami hero and an ambassador of a couple other ed tech tools. But I just fell in love with Cami with all of its accommodations and accessibility. And it's just Swiss Army knife, like you said, of all of the things you can do with it inside the classroom. And even since then, I joined Cami not this past year, but the year before in January. And not this past January, but the January before. And so it's been a year and about 3 months now that I've been with Cami, and or a year and a half. Oh my gosh, it's almost June. Okay. Um, but yeah, it's grown so much, and I just love it even more because of all the cool tools and things that we can do with it, now even. Um, but even before that, I sort of grew up with a family of educators. I come from a military family where learning was very important and expanding your horizons. And then my grandmother was a volunteer at the local schools and education programs, and my mother was an educator as well. And I was also in 4-H hardcore, and I wanted the summers off so I could go camp counsel at 4-H camps and teach kids there as well. So that's sort of how I fell into going into education. I think it was sort of a fall in because I was going to be an X-ray technician.
There you go.
Now I'm here teaching teachers all over the US how to level up their instruction and integrate Kimmy into classrooms to make their life easier.
That is awesome, and that's such a great story, and I always like to love to ask, obviously that superhero origin story because as educators, we all come from different backgrounds, and some of us, may go through the traditional education route, four-year university and all of that, through education. Others like myself, we come from, industry or coming in from a different background into education. So that's always great to learn about, but that's wonderful, family of educators. So right from the get-go, you already knew that that was something that you loved to do, which was just sharing your learning with others, and that's wonderful. So let me ask you, so within when you first started teaching, what subject and what grade or excuse me, yeah, what subject and grade level did you start off with?
Started off with math, seventh grade math in little old McDowell County, West Virginia. Um, we had 2 middle schools, but it was more because of the landscape that we had 2 middle schools rather than the size. We really couldn't get to the other half of the county because of the mountains. And it was this little middle school. We had 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. There was one group of kids. So I had every single 7th grader in the entire school would come through me. And it was amazing. It was an amazing. I was there for 3 years. Um, I actually didn't get to start on the very first day of school because when I got hired in early enough, but then I had to go to the state to get approved, because they were taken over. Hi, Melissa. Because they were, taken over by the state and they had to get, like, approval and stuff. But then I got to start a little bit in September, so someone else I set up my classroom because we knew it was gonna be me, but someone else started teaching my kids and started the routine. So that was something that I missed out on my very first year teaching. Um, and they always say that there's never a group of kids like your very first group of kids. And that is surely true in my point for sure, for sure. I, we went down where we were, for my husband to go to pharmacy school. So we like went up and moved. So I was all alone and I was first year teacher. So I was just engulfed in everything that teacher does and is, and preparing everything in my textbooks really just a resource rather than a guide. So I was creating a lot of stuff and my first year teacher. So my kids were my life. And now they're having babies and getting married.
Oh my goodness, that is yeah, and that's so true. Like right now, I have because I did start off in ninth grade for 3 years, and then I moved down to elementary, fifth and sixth. So I think my last group of students that will have gone through me this next year will be their senior year, and I won't have any more students within the district anymore at all whatsoever. So it's just like, wow, time definitely flies. But you're absolutely right. I still remember that first group of kids and that first year just immersing myself in math and just again like just falling in love with everything about teaching. So it's definitely been great and wonderful. So now I want to ask you, so you did start off with math, and then of course I know you said you taught other multiple subjects, but when was that exact point where you kind of just started integrating technology and maybe just trying to maybe that just taking the risk of using it, maybe introducing it to your students and so on? Or was, and I would imagine that that's what helped you get your role and as kind of the tech coach within your district. Would that be okay to say?
Yeah. Well, I actually started integrating technology into the classroom before I was a teacher. I was an undergrad and grad assistant at my university where I got my bachelor's and my first master's degree. And I helped my professor, hey, Steve, I helped my professor integrate technology into her classroom while I was in my master's program. So I actually taught some college classes. I had my bachelor's degree and I taught some college classes while I was a graduate assistant with her. And I was helping her integrate some technology, just simple texting in answers to a question to create a word cloud. That was one of the first technology integration lessons that I ever helped create in a classroom when I was at the college level.
Now, so then transitioning that into the classroom, tell us a little bit about that experience. Now, at the time, since you had that experience when you were doing, here at the university, and now bringing that into the classroom, were you kind of one of the teacher that just kind of started pushing forward, and everybody's like, what is she doing and questioning? So, tell me a little bit about that experience, and maybe just your colleagues' reactions, and then maybe your students' reactions too, as well as you're implementing some of this tech into your classroom.
I was definitely the tech teacher. I was. I was the one. There was a mobile cart of old laptops that it was the math cart, and it was mainly for, they had, like, a program that was similar to Alex that the kids got on, and it sort of was like a pathway in 8th grade. So, the really only 8th grade class students in math used it once a week, and I was like, "Well, if you're not using it the rest of the time, can I use it?" And we sure did, and so that cart basically lived in my room, and then we got some grant money, and we got iPads, and so the math team also got a set of iPads to share between us, and it basically lived in my room as well. And I remember within my 3 years of being there, I had a class period of kids that were just, I think it was my 2nd year, maybe even my no, it was my 2nd year. I don't remember. Um, they were just brilliant. Like, we were using this new curriculum that was more student-centered, and they were talking in small groups and teaching themselves and just asking me questions when they would get stumped. And I would just look over the shoulder and be like, all right, maybe you want to look at that one again. So we then dove into a math mystery book called Island of the Unknowns and started doing a blog about it. So we got these kids in the blogging, and we had back then the clickers to do answers for bell ringers, so I could collect data on the bell ringer activity. The bell ringer was the very first like activity we did of the day while I was taking attendance and stuff. And so they would go up and get their clickers, and they would just type in their answer, and then they would I would get that data to then know how to inform my teaching for the rest of the week or even that day, depending on what the answers were. So that group dove into the wide world of cyber citizenship and community and safety. And we just learned so much. And I got kids recording themselves while reading and put that on a website. And it actually got noticed by a school in Barcelona. And we collaborated. And that was amazing. I haven't thought about this in a while, but yeah, that was a really amazing experience in my life to be in little old West Virginia and little old McDowell County, West Virginia, collaborating with a school in Spain.
That is amazing. And that's the one thing that I love is just the way that you went ahead, took what was there, taking some risks and just really willing to introduce some of this technology, and then taking not only that, but seeing school not just your four walls of your brick and mortar classroom, but again, being just, breaking down those walls. And like you said, being able to connect your students to other students around the world and giving them that amazing learning experience. And that is so powerful. So, is that, the type of practice that you did there? Is that what helped you get into the role as far as a technology coach?
I think so. I think I just sort of grew from there. So I was only there for 3 years, and then we had to move for my husband graduated from pharmacy school, so we had to move for his job. And then I bounced between two of the two middle schools in my new district, where I was a technology integration math teacher one year. So I was doing technology based math support. So I had it was really odd being a math teacher, but I was a related arts class. So they got to choose to come to me if they wanted to. It was like one of those that they got to choose in middle school. So I had sixth, seventh, and eighth graders that year. Sixth graders were heavy on keyboarding and digital citizenship, and eighth graders were very big on the Excel program and projects through that, and creating a lot of creative. We did videos and digital storyboarding and all this really cool things in eighth grade. And then seventh grade was like a mesh of both of those things. And I was one of the first teachers that in my little group to be like, okay, everything's going to be online and available for you to access whenever you want. And everyone else was like at the copy room, like making everything. And I was only making one copy. And I'm like, if you lose this copy, sorry about your luck. I'm not going to make another one. Check online. You know where to find it, sort of thing. And then I went and actually taught eighth grade math, which was the best collaborative year. I had two other math teachers with me. That it was absolutely amazing. We did a lot of simple tech integration, and it wasn't real deep dive because we didn't have a whole lot of like one-on-one devices. So we did a lot of like strategic placement of the technology that we were going to be using and how we were going to use it. And then I taught science. And that one was a lot more tech integration. I dove into Google Classroom hardcore and created classes there and Classcraft, and our grade book at that time had where you could actually post assignments, let the kids and the parents see at least what the materials were, even though they were turning it in on Google Classroom. And we were doing digital collaboration. I was sharing the activities that I was doing when I was teaching eighth grade math, at least at my grade level. And then when I went to teach science, I was sharing it with the other science teacher and the other science teachers across the county, and then more across the whole school. And then that was the year that my principal came to me and she said, I know this job's going to open. You need to apply for it.
That is amazing. Well, that's wonderful. And that's such a great story because in a similar way, that's really how I ended up in this role, which would be similar to yours as far, but it's just a different title, instructional software specialist, but really it'd be tech coach, tech integrationist, the equivalent of that. But it's also just like you said, just being able to take those risks. And much like yourself, started off math, went down to elementary math, and then I started teaching. They're like, hey, we need a science teacher. And I was like, okay. So I started teaching science. And then they're like, hey, we need a social studies teacher. So I was like, okay, well, let's do science and social studies and then math and all of that. And again, just being able to take that one cart that we had and maximize it and just, have some fun and enjoy and integrating just some wonderful activities. So that's wonderful. So now, as you transitioned into your new role, so I want to ask a couple of questions because obviously, as the year's winding down, there may be some new to the position educators that might turn into tech coaches or tech integrationists and so on. So, based on your experience, from the years that you had there, I wanted to ask you what would be some of the best, I guess, supporting practices to help, integrate more tech with maybe new teachers or even veteran teachers. What were some of your key practices?
I would actually say don't do more, do less. Pick one thing, and it's got to be purposeful. It can't just be because we have it. My mom is actually a tech coach now, so, and she came home to me today, and she was talking about how she passed by a classroom, and the students were on one of those learning path software programs on their computers, and so they were just on there and they were clicking away, but there was like no interaction with each other. There was no interaction with the teacher. They were just sort of sitting there on their own independently learning, which there is a place for that. There is. But after a while, we know kids, they're not going to continue being that focused all the time. So I would say use it purposefully, not just as a babysitter. And don't think of it as just a babysitter. You can do so much more than just sit them in front of it like you do a TV. So figure out what their problem is, figure out what they're struggling with, figure out what is something that technology can actually enhance, and then start with baby steps. So with Cami, the minimum thing that you can do with Cami is just replace the use of the copy machine so that you're not worrying about, I need to get in early to make copies for that test. I need to get early to do this, or I'm gonna have to stay late and make copies for this, or I'm having sub plans and I had to make copies for an entire week because my kid's getting the wisdom teeth taken out. Whatever it is, cut out the copy machine at the minimum, use Cami to assign through your LMS and have your kids just log in and replace your pencil and paper with the computer. But then you can go even further with that with just a simple click of a button for them to tell you their answers instead of writing their answers. Or specifically for sub plans, clone yourself by shooting a 3 to 5 minute video, even though you could take 20 minutes, but don't, they're not going to watch it. 3 to 5 minute video of you explaining yourself what you want your kids to do while you're gone or while you're working in small groups, while they're doing other stations. You have a clone of you at every station explaining what's going on the activity that you want them to do. And it saves you so much time. Saves you so much time just to use Kimmy.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that I love that you said, and usually I kind of say, keep it simple, but you, like you said, do less.
Do less.
I am huge on that. And sometimes a lot of people like, well, wait a minute. It's like you love tech and everything. I was like, as much as I love tech, I love to keep it simple. And so, oftentimes that's the case. Like, during COVID, it was what platforms do we need funds? What do you suggest? And I said, Cami for sure, because you don't have to worry about packets while other school districts are out rolling out packets and so on. It's like, hey, we've got Cami. We've had it even prior to pandemic, so let's make sure that we keep that, during our the shutting down of schools and everything. And that is a huge game changer. It's great for our content specialists also as they create their resources. Teachers find it useful. And one thing that I loved when I was using Cami, like I was telling you in the warm up chat, back in 2017, 16, 17 school year, my last year in the classroom, when I discovered Cami way back when, was the fact that I never had to worry about stacks of papers anymore on my desk. That became very ominous because now I can simply assign, my documents to my students and they can go ahead and annotate all over it. And you're absolutely right. A lot of them, I would have them do recordings. They would record their voice, they would record notes, and all of that is all integrated in there. That it just makes it wonderful, and that's why it's one of my favorite tools, because it has a purpose in so many ways, and helping students that need supports, helping a teacher clone themselves, like you mentioned, being able to assign through an LMS and grade through your LMS. And now those days of those ominous stacks or those milk crates that you're taking home on a Friday, and they stay there till Sunday evening, and you're just like, no, I'm not going to grade completion. Those days are gone, but because now it's that ease of use, and the collaborative features are amazing too, as well as you can go ahead and the students can collaborate within the class and collaborating with the teacher. So it's definitely amazing there. So now, again, going back to your experience also as well, because again, making the tech purposeful. And again, this is some sound advice for even current tech integrationists like myself, and of course, many others that are currently within that role or those that will be coming into that role. I want to ask you something, and it could be either overall, because I know that you worked PD, through Cami with a lot of school districts and even through your own experience. What would you say some of the, bigger barriers or the barriers would be or are for integrating technology in a classroom for some teachers?
They don't want to.
Okay.
They honestly don't see the point. So there are these teachers at every single school. You have the ones that are like me, super eager. Let's try that out. Bring in the virtual reality goggles. Let me check out that iPad cart. Let me do this. Let me do it. Let me do it. I found this new site. What do you think about it? You have those teachers. Then you have the teachers that are like, okay, I need to be able to do this. Tell me what you got. But they're still hesitant and they want you in there holding your hand every single way. And then there are the teachers that are like, don't step in my door. Don't step in here. I don't need you. I don't want you. Technology has no place in my classroom. But let me tell you this. I worked at a high school that had a carpentry class, had an ag class. I integrated technology into their classroom. So these kids are literally helping animals give birth and building houses, and they use technology in their classrooms. So if I can get into their classroom and figure out something purposeful for them, I can do it for anybody. And so can your coach. You just got to give it a chance because it really can save you so much time and effort.
Excellent. Yep. And, I agree with you on that 100%. Obviously, one of the things that I did notice, and of course, this has kind of changed a little bit more, but that first year back, we came back into the campus and it was copy machines were running full force, Chromebooks put away in the corners and so on. And to me, it would just seem like it was because of that trauma
It was a
of,
trauma.
yeah, it's like Chromebook is associated with that trauma. And no, I don't want to go through that. And Chromebooks are just for pandemic reasons and they're not for regular instruction. It's we're going back to,
I don't need it
pencil and
anymore.
paper. Yeah,
Hmm.
I don't need it anymore. We're back in and I understand, there's a way there's you I'm still, pro pencil and paper, to some extent, but once you transition into the digital realm, what I always tell teachers is try not to just simply substitute what you're doing, like really augment it, take it to that next level with the tech that you have. And obviously, well, I always tell teachers, some great learning artifacts that you can get from students are definitely either video recordings, voice recordings, annotations, or anything that you have evidence of learning. And it's a great learning artifact that will be submitted to you that you can share, in case you have a meeting, whether it's for student grades, whether it's for any special programs that they may be in, but you have that evidence of learning. And that's one of the big things that I love. And talking about that, I mean, Cami offers all of that in one place. So I want to ask you, with your experience too, as well as a tech coach, and then obviously your role with Cami, oftentimes we are thinking about technology now, and especially with AI, it's, oh, critical thinking is going to be out the door and all of those great things. So how do you help your teachers understand that balance between, the technology and, the critical thinking and creativity that can take place in the classroom? How would you kind of coach them through that or put them at ease?
It's really looking at what you're asking them to do. You can have, yes, the same model definitely can help with the augmenting and moving it up the model. But just really evaluate what you're asking them to do. It can now be done by a robot. Is it really worth their time learning how to do it? And it goes back to, all right, so everyone's up in arms about ChatGPT and other AIs, right? When I was in the math classroom, they had the math app that literally you take a picture of it and it tells them how to solve it. No one went crazy then. And no one, like, they're cheating. They're cheating every single day. They're cheating off of each other. They're cheating off of the internet. They're looking all over the place. They're cheating. Okay. So think about what you're asking them to do. Instead of solving this problem as a math teacher, have them create the problem and then solve a friend's problem or check a problem or put a problem that's wrong up on the board and have them dissect it and figure out where the problem went wrong. That you're going to get more critical thinking out of that sort of thing than them actually just solving a whole 50 worksheets, a 50 problem worksheet and have them do 49 of them wrong. Um, so just, and then have them talk and write about it. So if you're an English teacher, you're going to be writing and talking about it all the time. But a math teacher, you don't really think about writing and talking that much. But when that actually analyzing what they just did brings math to a whole level. Their kids are like, okay, so what'd you do here? And they just shut down. They're like, what? I'm like, I could see that you did 2 steps and that we talked about doing 15 steps, exaggeration. What was going on in your head for all these steps that you missed? And they just sort of look at me like, I just did the math. I'm like, what? What did you think when you skipped that step? What was it? And bringing it out of them, even just in words, is like pulling teeth. But then if you get them more used to doing that and explaining their thinking and talking with somebody else about what they also did or giving them sentence prompts to be like, I agree, but what if you did it this way? I disagree because I see this here or whatever. Like giving them prompts to actually talk about it and work through what they did, why they did it. Could I do it another way? Or ask them to solve it another way. That's my favorite thing. Solve this problem, but do it 2 different ways. because then they're
Yeah.
like, how else can I do it? I love it. I love those things.
No,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, and then in writing too, like getting them to look at what they've written or what somebody else has written and think about why was that word chosen? Could another word be better than that? Or even one of my favorite templates in the CUNY library right now is build your own monster. And then they get to play around and drag and click and build their own monster. And my favorite example is to then create a backstory of your monster and use descriptive words to describe your monster. Paint me a word picture. ChatGPT can't paint me a word picture about the monster that you just made.
I love that. That is great. You know, you hit on a couple of things that I did want to highlight, which is number one, I think that well, at least in my observation, and this is I'm only speaking for myself here and what we observe, and in speaking with one of my colleagues who's a content math specialist too, and we could go visit classrooms, is that there isn't, and again, it no fault am I saying this is the teacher's fault, but oftentimes it's because the curriculum is like you have to be here at this certain time by this date and so on because of that, that there isn't enough time for discourse, discussion in class, having those conversations like you mentioned that I love where you're able to talk to one of your students and say, "Hey, why did you skip this step?" And find out the whys from them, find out their thought process from them. And like you said, you're absolutely right. It could definitely be like pulling teeth because they're just like, "No, I just want to do it," or they don't want to verbalize and so on. But one of the things that I loved, when I did have those opportunities was just allowing students to, if they have their Chromebook, it's like, hey, I really want to know what your thought process is. So I would say, if you have some time, please just go over there to the corner and do a quick screencast. Or again, if we're working on a digital worksheet, they can already do it on Cami, or they can just type it and they don't have to tell me. But I would ask them, as like, please, because I wanted that learning artifact for myself so I can learn how my student learns and what their thought process was. It just because there was a misconception? Was it that they didn't understand? Was it maybe they were just, plain lazy and or they just said, you know what, I just don't need that step and they're able to figure it out just, mentally, which is fine. But at least there was some form of thought that we can go ahead and I can work with and then we can have a class discussion about it because I know that not every single one of my students was going to do the math problem the exact same way, but at least I know what directions they go. And that helps me to guide the learning even better. And so that's one of the things that I absolutely love about using Cami in the classroom because it just made it so easy for me to be able to get feedback from my students and then obviously give that feedback back to them. So
Ooh,
that's wonderful. So yeah, I definitely wanted to add to that because that collaboration piece is excellent.
you just made a memory trigger. Um, my first 3 years teaching, I had my kid, we had a very special answer sheet because I didn't want them writing on the tests. Um, or they could, they were showing all their work on the test, but I wanted an answer sheet to quickly just grade. So we had like short answer, multiple choice, fill in the blank, true, false, that sort of stuff on the answer. But on the answer sheet, they also had to mark whether they were guessing, really knew what they were doing, or they just skipped over this one, sort of thing. And it was also like we had it related to the standard and all that jazz because we had documentation, reflection notebooks, and binders and stuff, and we had student parent conferences where they showed in their own data. It was a fantastic school. Anyways, um, we would then go over the test, and I give them back their answer sheet with the X's and rights and wrongs, and they would notice because a lot of kids would get really like sad and upset that they would get like a really bad grade or they would miss one, and they would get upset. But then they would look at their answer sheet and look at what they said about how much they tried on that problem and realize, oh, okay, I didn't try on that one. That's why I got it wrong. Or I just missed one step. And then they would explain to me why they got it wrong. So they didn't try, they didn't, or I just messed up. I put a negative instead of a positive, or I inverted the fraction. They knew what they did wrong and it helped them not make that same mistake again. And eventually they were sharing what they did wrong with the group. Um, Not all of them, but some of them. And so then they were learning from each other that way. And I too struggled with the whole we don't have time to do this thing. However, they are going to learn so much more from that discourse, from those conversations, from diving deep into those sort of things than they will by doing 5 times the number of practice problems. So maybe consider not doing so many practice problems. Um, and then they just cheated on homework, or they didn't have the support at home to do homework. So I never did homework, or if I did, it was only 5 problems and they had the class time to do it at the end of class and at the beginning of the next day. So it wasn't like something that they had to do at home. And then I coached volleyball. So a lot of them just stayed after school on it. Helped them with then. But yeah, so one of the favorite tips that I do is that every once in a while you have the kids explain their thinking on a problem, not all the problems, strategic problems that you want them to explain their thinking so that you can catch those misconceptions before they solidify, so that you can listen to those and listen to key students, not all the students, just some key students you know are probably going to be struggling based on your observations, and then bring those concepts back around the next day.
Love it. Excellent. I just, it's so interesting, just your practice, and it just resonates so much with me because we're kind of like very parallel in our practice and what we were doing. And I, I'm with you 100% just following. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like my playbook, that I use. And it's just great to hear that, hey, I wasn't too far off doing some good things if Sophie's doing it. So that's great. So, Sophie, okay, so tell us a little bit more as we're kind of just almost winding down and so on. But I do want to, learn about your Cami journey now. So, you're in the classroom, you're a tech coach. And so, tell me a little bit about how this opportunity to work with Cami came about.
Well, I became a Cami hero. I was one of two Cami heroes in West Virginia. And we were the first two ever in West Virginia. And we were both coaches in the county. I was a secondary coach. She was an elementary coach. I still love her dearly. She went back into the classroom and did not become a Cami hero again. And then I got hired by Cami. So there's no more Cami heroes in West Virginia. But what happened was Vanessa and Alberly sent out an email to all the Cami heroes at the end of the calendar year saying, hey, we're thinking about hiring some coaches and teachers for the business development representative role. And I'm like, meh, I don't want to do that. But then I looked into it a little bit and I was like, okay, I think I might be able to do this. Um, and I was sort of in like a stagnant space where I was at that time in my life. I was in it. I was in it deep. I had like a kid in daycare, a kid in pre-K, and we were going to OT and speech, and just I was in it deep. And I was coaching. I had like 60 teachers that I was trying to help. And we were going through administration changes and learning how to work with a new administrator and then still to be me. And it was a lot. So I was feeling a little like meh, and I was doing so much more than what my job title entailed. And I was like, I'm ready for a new adventure here. So I went on to the first interview. Actually, the first one was just like a video of Teach Cami. So I actually created the whole module for the entire district on how to do Cami. So I was like, I know how to do this. So I just did a cute little video of like 5 tools in Cami. Sent that off to Pamela. And she was like, hey, let's meet up. And then we had an interview. And I'm like, man, I don't think I'm going to do this. I hadn't told anybody yet. I told my husband, and I hadn't told anybody else. And I'm like, man, I don't know how interested I am, but I'll sign up for the next one. And I got through to the next line, and I signed up at the meeting, and I had a meeting with um, one of the sales executives, and because I was going to be paired up with a sale executive and be like their buddy, helping them out so they could be successful. And the job was going to be like contract based, that I would have to bill Cami for the hours that I was putting in, and might get compensated for the sales that my AE was making. And I was like, I'm not interested in that. And then like the whole phone call situation, I get anxious just trying to call my doctor to make an appointment. So like, I don't want to call people that I don't even know. Um, so yeah, I was like, I don't think I'm going to do this. But then I made it through to the next line, and my competitive side was like, yeah, of killing it, that or they don't have anybody else applying. So went on to the next line, and it was an interview with Bob, who's the co-founder of the company, and he was very chill and genuine and kind. They even set me up with an extra phone call with with a different sales executive who is still with us, and I love working with her. And Caitlin, we had a chat about how she gets to go on walks with her dog and go to the bathroom whenever she wants and drink her coffee hot. And it was something that really resonated with me. And then like the role sort of changed before any offers went out. So it was going to be salary based, and I was more comfortable with that. But honest to goodness, I went into the interview with Bob ready to say, I'm not interested in this. I even had told my administrator already by this time, because it was like a month. It was months of interviews and processing and waiting and all that stuff. And I had finally told my administrator that they were interested in me, but I'm not sure if I'm going to take it. In fact, right before I went into the interview with Bob, I said, I'm not taking this job. I'm not taking this job. I'm going to stay here and continue doing the good work that I'm doing here. I left that meeting wanting the job. Um, and I got the offer letters. And it was actually kind of ironic because the Cami Connect the year before, like the February before I started, was Marcus Stein's first Cami Connect hosting. And he announced that he was the teacher success champion at Cami. And I live tweeted him and I said, you want someone else on your team? And now here I am, the professional development manager to his head of business development. I'm on the Marcus Stein team.
There you go. That is wonderful. And like we were saying, this has all happened in a year and a half, and it's just been great. And like I said, I'm a huge fan. I follow you on Instagram and, the work that you do. And I know, Instagram sometimes it's like, you're putting out stuff there, but, just the work that you do. And even, when I got to connect with my friend and our friend, Steve, also, like, and I told him, I was like, hey, guess what? Sophie's going to be on the show. He got so excited and everything. And it just goes to show, just how everybody really supports each other and is just very genuine. As I mentioned, we had Steve, then we had Marcus, Melissa, then Nicole, and now you. And like I mentioned, and I'm putting it out there. So anybody that's listening, from Cami right now watching this show or catching it on the replay, I'm going to make sure I get everybody from Cami on the show. That's my goal. All right. Well, Sophie, it's just been an amazing conversation. I really appreciate all the great shares that you have, your enthusiasm. Very great knowledge nuggets that you shared for any current coaches or any soon to be coaches that's wonderful and that's great. So thank you so much for all of those shares. And I think we've got here, okay, we've got Steve saying here, Oliver's next.
Get
And I
ready,
think,
Ollie.
yeah, my friend Oscar Carrera, who's joining us too as well from El Paso. He says, great story, Sophie. So Oscar's a great guy too as well. So make sure that you all connect with Sophie. So, Sophie, this is the part of the show that we kind of wrap up here with the last three questions. And if you've seen the show or at least heard, that last part of the show, here we go. It's your turn to answer these fantastic three questions. However, the last question I'm going to change up just a little bit because normally I ask like if I was on your podcast, but I'm going to ask something a little different. But I know that you'll have a great answer for it. But here we go. Question number one. As you know, every superhero has a weakness, and Superman's weakness was that kryptonite that just weakened him. So I want to ask you, in the current state of education, what would you say is your current edu kryptonite?
Honestly, I've been thinking about this one ever since I knew I was going to be on. I struggle with it. I guess I don't know. Indecisiveness, I guess, could be my weakness then. Um, Not just mine, but like teachers and admin and the higher ups. If you're so indecisive that you just can't make a decision on anything and it drags out, we're only hurting kids. So whichever way you decide to go, pick one so we can learn from it and go from there. But yeah, I guess indecisiveness is, and I'm very indecisive myself. So I guess that
All right. Good answer. Good answer. All right. Sophie, question number 2 is, if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
it would be level up with Sophie. I'm here for you.
Love it.
Ever since I went into education, my catchphrase has been, I'm here for you. I'd say it to my students, I'm here for you. And I meant it. And I had like this stash of all the secret things that all the kids came to in the salt packets to put on their food because school's food doesn't have salt anymore, extra ketchup because they were only allowed 2 things of it. I had all that stuff. I'm here for you. When I became a coach, I'm here for you. And I still use it, except I change it now that I work for Cami. I say, we are here for you. And that is on my signature for every single one. And I truly do mean it. I've never turned anyone down that's asked for help. I've never assisted someone that I thought that I could help out. And sometimes I just do a quick Slack huddle on with just anybody that's asking a question on Slack or said something on Slack, and I'm eager to answer their questions and to help them because I love it. I love it.
Excellent. I love it. That's great. Wonderful answer. All right. So, Sophie, question number 3. Here's what I have to ask you. All right. If you can turn any of your, let's say, if you have a hobby or maybe one of your favorite activities to do, and if you can turn that into just your profession, what hobby or what activity might that be?
I think you're going to be surprised by this one. Video games.
All right.
Right now, my husband and I are knee deep in Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. And this is actually one of the flowers from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I just absolutely love The Legend of Zelda. It goes back to my childhood, watching my cousins play on the original Nintendo all the way through all the systems. Video games have always been a constant from far back as I can remember. I didn't ever have them. My cousins had the system. I played with my grandmother's house. But now that I have my own adult money, we have all the systems and all the games, and I do that to de-stress. So I would probably play video games.
Perfect. Love it.
I would probably go one step further and be like, I'd be that one person that you're watching on YouTube that's struggling and then eventually learns how to do it. And then it's like, oh, okay, guys, here's the trick. Here's what made it work. And I'd still be teaching. So that's
Yeah. I can totally see that though. That's wonderful. Well, Sophie, I just again want to say thank you so much for being with us this evening. I appreciate, like I said, your genuineness, your authenticity, your enthusiasm. I love it all. Thank you so much for what you're doing also as well in serving all our wonderful educators through Cami, through all the support that you bring. And of course, want to give a big shout out to the Cami team as well. And thank you, Steve, for joining us in the chat. Oscar, Mel, also for joining us in the chat too, as well. And for all of you guys that are going to be catching this episode on the replay or listening to it later on, through Spotify or your favorite podcast player, as always, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your support. Please continue to support our mission of connecting educators and creators one show at a time. Visit our YouTube channel. Please make sure you subscribe, give us a thumbs up. We definitely appreciate that. Follow us on all socials. Make sure you listen to us on all of your favorite podcast players. Make sure that you queue us up and all that stuff. So all the wonderful algorithms continue to put us into your feed so we can continue to bring you some amazing, insightful conversations, enthusiastic conversations, inspiring conversations. So thank you so much. And also, guys, if you'd like to contribute to our mission, please make sure you stop by our merch store. You can stop by our merch store at myedtech.life, myedtech.life, and you can go ahead and get yourself a cap. We have some sweaters, we've got some shirts, and all of that goes back to our show so we can continue bringing you some amazing conversations. And also, please make sure that you go check out this episode and the other 203 wonderful episodes of My EdTech Life with great educators and creators that you can take some knowledge nuggets from and sprinkle them on to what you are already doing great. So, as always, my friends, thank you And until next time, don't forget, stay techie.